Hey guys, Krozjin here, and welcome back to Pillars of Eternity. Now today I wanted to do an in-depth look at the character creation, because there's a lot of different classes, a lot of different races, and I just want to go over each one with a little more detail than I did in the playthrough, so you guys can figure out what you prefer, how you want to build your characters. Really quick, I'm just going to hit next through everything. Select something random. This is purely so, and I don't want that. So this is purely just so I can unlock all the options up here so I can swap between them really fast. So at the very beginning you select male and female. It's very standard. Let's go with a female. Then you go to race. So races, you have 6 different types. You have human, which are your basic humans. Your amawa, which are basically your like aquatic creatures. Dwarfs, Elves, Orlins, and my personal favorite, the Godlike. Look at that face. That's an amazing looking face. So, all the different classes have their own benefits. So, for example, the humans gain +1 resolve and +1 might. Amawa gain +2 might. The dwarves gain 2 might, -1 dexterity, and +1 constitution. So overall, they gain +2, but they do sacrifice 1 dexterity for it. Elves get dexterity and perception, Orlins resolve and perception, but -1 might, and Godlike get dexterity and intellect. Now, really quick, I'm going to go to attributes and explain those first. That is why I wanted to unlock everything, so it'll be an easier way for me to explain what everything does. So, might. Might increases your damage and healing strength. Now, this is very key. As a priest or as a healer, you still want might, or your heals will be very low. And of course, as a damage dealer, you want might as well to get the bigger hits. It also increases your fortitude, which is your resistances to physical damage. So it's very good for both melee and spellcasters alike. Very key stat. Then you have Constitution. Constitution is endurance and health, as well again as fortitude. Now, endurance is your health inside of the actual battle, and your health is overall. So as an example, your character can have 100 health, and when he goes into battle, he has 20 endurance. If he takes 10 endurance damage, he's fine, he survives with 50% life, and his overall health goes down to 90. Now he can go to 0 endurance and be passed out, and after the battle, presuming you win, his health will be 80, because his endurance was 20 out of a total 100 life, and he will be back to normal. So, but if his health drops to 0, he'll actually just be killed. I believe there's an option you can enable to not have your character permanently die, but usually if your health goes down to 0, your character is just dead. Now, dexterity is your action speed and reflex. So basically, the more action speed you have, the faster you will attack, and the less downtime between attacks will be. It also increases your reflex, which is the ability to dodge out of attacks entirely. The next one we have is Perception. Now, Perception is Interrupt, Deflection, and more reflex. Interrupt is very simple. If someone's casting a spell and you interrupt them, the spell doesn't go off, and you have to recast it. So the higher chance to interrupt can be very useful for a lot of characters. Same thing with Deflection. Well, not same thing. Deflection is the defense to AoE attacks. Sort of like a reflex is to physical. Deflection, though, I guess not just AoE. Any kind of attack is a chance to avoid being hit entirely. So whereas armor prevents a certain amount of damage, Deflection just, they miss. You take no damage at all. So it is really nice. Then we have Intellect. Intellect is a little bit different than a lot of games. Usually if you're a spellcaster, you want a lot of intellect to do a lot of damage. In this case, that is not it, because we have might for the extra damage and healing. And this of course includes the spellcasters melee and everyone alike. Intellect controls your area of effect, duration, and gives you ability of will defense, which is your defense for magical attacks. Now, area effect and duration is very big for Intellect, because you can basically increase any kind of ability that has an effect, whether it's a Barbarian Shout, an actual like fireball explosion, anything at all, and you can increase its range further and further as you level it up. Duration is very nice as well, because they go hand in hand. If you, for example, cast a fireball that does AoE splash damage, and it causes people to go aflame, then it might also it will cause them to go on fire for a longer period of time based on your intellect. So if I put in another point, as you see, the amount changes. And the last stat we have is Resolve. Now Resolve gives you more concentration, which is the ability to not have anything be interrupted. So it's like your anti-perception is your Resolve. It gives you as well more deflection and more will. So this is just a very good defensive stat. So now we took care of those. Let's go back to our races and just take a look more closely at them. So humans have a little bonus to might, a little bonus to damage and healing, and bonus to a little bit of a defense. Amawa have a lot of extra damage. They're actually the biggest class you can have. Dwarfs have bonus to damage and constitution, but they're very slow. Because of the -1 to dexterity, their attacks will be slower than someone that doesn't have that negative. Of course, you can still make a dwarf archer, but if you want to really min-max it, then you can't. You don't want to go with a dwarf. Elves, on the other hand, are great archers because they have the bonus to dexterity and the bonus to perception. So they can really go with a nice range setup and try to interrupt and things of that nature. Next we have Orlins, who have the +1 Resolve, -1 Might, and +2 Perception. So I feel like these guys would be like terrific rogues because of the bonus in Perception and the bonus in Resolve. They don't really care about Might, because rogues, you probably want to use them to stun lock and things of that nature. And then the last one is Godlike with their Dexterity and Intellect. They offer a really nice quick attack bonus as well as AoE upgrade. Now, of course, all of these are just +2 overall. They are not going to make or break your build. So if you like one over the other, you can ignore the stats entirely. It's up to you. This is purely for the people that really want to min-max the character creation. So next we have classes. Now for classes, we have different options for each character. So let's go over those right now. So for humans, we have 3 options for subrace. We have Meadowfolk, Oceanfolk, and Savannah Folk. They have all different abilities, different passives. So for example, if I go under here, different options become available. So under human Meadowfolk, they gain Fighting Spirit once per encounter. 5 seconds after being reduced below 50% endurance, folk temporarily gain bonuses to accuracy and damage, which is really nice when you're constantly being pushed below 50% because you may be squishy or in the front line. Getting a bonus to hit and damage can be really beneficial. Then you have Ocean Folk, which also these have different looks, but of course you can customize those, so don't worry about it. We have Ocean Folk, which have Fighting Spirit once per encounter. Oh, I guess these 3 all do the same thing. Okay, so the humans have the same option for all 3. Not all of them do. If we go to Amawa, we have Coastal Amawa, which they gain bonuses to defend against prone and stun effects. Really nice if you're a tank and you want to keep your group safe. They can take the CC damage and debuffs and be fine, or at least more fine. And then the Island Amawa. All Island Amawa gain additional weapon set. So overall, you can have 4 different weapon sets through the game. You start with 2, so Island Amawa start with 3. So you can, for example, have a setup where you have a sword and shield, another one that's a bow, and a third one that is, for example, a 2-handed weapon. So that is really nice. Then we have Dwarfs. Dwarves have Mountain and Boreal. Now, Mountain Dwarves have a nice resistance to poison and disease attacks above other classes. Boreal gain 15 accuracy against any creature of the wilder and primordial types. Now, because I'm pretty early on in the game, I can't tell you how often these occur, but 15 accuracy is pretty big. The way it works is a dice is rolled 1 to 100, and basically adding 15 accuracy is 15% higher chance to hit something. So that is huge. So if you're ever fighting against a wilder or primordial, this will be a big help. Next we have the Elves. We have the Wood Elves and the Pale Elves. The Wood Elves, against any enemy that is more than 4 meters away, Wood Elves gain bonuses to accuracy, deflection, and reflex, which makes them a fantastic archer. The bonus to accuracy for the hit, and deflection and reflex for the added defense, considering they're going to be pretty squishy. And we have the Pale Elves. They gain elemental endurance, which increases their resistances to burn and freeze damage. Again, really nice in the back, or in the front in this case, because of the resistances and just overall defense boost. Next we have Orlins with Hearth Orlin and Wild Orlin. Now, Hearth Orlin, when attacking any target that is also being targeted by a teammate, Hearth Orlin converts some of their hits into crits. You can really use this to your advantage, given certain circumstances. Because you basically focus down some classes really nice with these guys. Some enemies. Then we have Wild Orlin, which I personally think look pretty cool. Like, look at that hair. Or fur. I'm not exactly sure. After being subjected to a will attack, Wild Orlins temporarily gain a bonus to all defenses. That is huge. Of course, it has to be a will attack, which is basically targeted by a spell. So, I don't know how often enemy spellcasters will attack into melee or ranged, like which one is preferred, but you can really just use this to your complete advantage. If you're against a lot of spellcasters, these guys are going to be great tanks. Then we have Godlike, my personal favorite, purely because of the look, and they have 4 different types. Death Godlikes, when Death Godlike attack an enemy with 25% or less endurance, their damage is increased. Now, at the beginning, this is not going to make a big difference. But if you, for example, are battling a big boss, and you got him down to 25% health, like after 5-10 minutes, then an extra bonus to damage will help that fight end just that much faster, which is really, really nice. Fire Godlikes, when reduced below 50% endurance, Fire Godlikes glow like metal in a forge, gaining damage reduction and doing a small amount of fire damage to any creature who hits them in melee. So these guys become really nice melee tanks or just combatants, in my opinion. We have Moon Godlike, which make for fantastic priests, because every encounter, when reduced below 75, 50, and 25% endurance, Moon Godlike regenerate waves of healing moonlight that restore endurance to them and their allies. And finally, Nature Godlikes. They have Wellspring of Life, grants a bonus to Might, Constitution, and Dexterity when endurance is below 50%. Also really nice. Now, these abilities, you might be thinking, are really, really powerful. Like, why did they get this? Well, that is mostly because they can't wear helmets. It might tell you here, the aberrant head shapes are typical, and Godlike are unable to wear protective headgear, as it is near impossible to find anything that fits. So you sacrifice basically a armor slot for a passive. That, in my opinion, is worth it. These passives are really, really strong. But I have not seen the really endgame headpieces, and those might be better. I'm not sure. That's for you guys to find out and decide. Or check online somewhere if you can find the endgame gear. So let's go ahead and just go with just a human. Let's go with metafolk, that's fine. And we can move on to classes. So we have 11 classes to choose from, which is crazy. The amount of options in just the character creation is huge. So we start with Barbarian. Remember, all classes start with a either ability, a passive, or a way they work, as well as different endurance, health, accuracy, and deflection stats. And some more other passive stats that I will go into in a little bit. To start with, Barbarians all gain Carnage. When Barbarians hit with melee attacks, they automatically make reduced damage attacks on all other enemies with a short distance of the target. So actually, when you, for example, are fighting 3 enemies in front of you and you're attacking the middle guy, presuming they're close together, the guys on either side will take a little bit of damage, which is really key. Because you can actually go ahead and, if you wanted to, just select anything, go ahead with a high dexterity, two-handed build with a lot of perception and really just try to interrupt as much as you want. Or concentrate on a lot of might and really knock one guy out and have the other ones pretty injured because of it. So you can really customize it as you wish because of this. It can be really used to your advantage. They also start with the highest endurance and health of any class you have available. Their accuracy is average and deflection is low because they do not dodge very well. They're barbarians. They're meant to just rush in and pummel guys into the face. Now they get the option to start out with one of 2 abilities. They have Frenzy, which you can use once per encounter. You get a bonus to Might and Constitution, and a little bonus to attack speed. Now, so you basically get a little more damage, a little more survivability, and higher attack speed, which in turn is more damage. But you have a less chance to dodge, which is already low, because if I go down here, deflection is already at 15, so your deflection is going to be at 5. Pretty much you're not dodging anything at that point. And your health and endurance is concealed for 12 seconds. So for 12 seconds, you will look like you are dead. Like you are going to be full red, it's going to start flashing. Don't panic, your guy is still alive, presumably. It is just being concealed. Now that also means for the bonus in damage and a little bit of constitution, you don't know how much life he has. So it can turn out that he's a 2 life, 2 endurance, and you just wouldn't know. So always be aware when you're using this that you don't know how much life they're going to have, so you might want to heal them a little more than is necessary. The other option is Barbaric Yell. You can use this twice per encounter. It has an area effect. That means it can be affected by Intellect, and increase this area, as well as increase the duration. Now, the effect is Frightened, and it is not actually fear. It is a reduction in Resolve and Dexterity by 2 points, and accuracy is reduced by 10. So the enemy has a less chance to hit you, and a higher chance to be hit. So it can be very beneficial in nice groups. You throw in your Barbarian to the middle, you do a Barbaric Yell, all of a sudden you're taking less damage and you're doing more damage at the same time. And this is against their will, which is their magic resist. The next class we have is Cypher. This is a really cool sort of hybrid spellcaster melee class. They have their starting ability is just a powers ability. Cyphers can directly target allies and enemies with powerful soul-focused effects. These powers cost focus, which Cyphers build through the use of the Soul Whip. Basically, the more you attack, the more hits you land, as a melee or I think range, I don't think it matters which one, you gain focus. Focus is then used to use your spells. So for example, Antipathetic Field, it requires 10 focus. I believe you get something like 2 focus per hit. I'm not sure. I would need to actually really look at it to be sure. Average attack has a range, duration, and it is a beam. Basically does damage. And all of these have a requirement for focus. Now these you can only take 2 of. As you see down here, remaining 2. So you can choose 2 you want to start with, and as you progress through, you might unlock further level 1 spells, as well as the higher level tiers, so don't worry about it. Yeah, so it seems like all the level 1 have 10 focus, and these do not have a use cost per encounter. Like, they can be used as many times as it takes, which is really nice for big bosses, fights that take a long time, and the such. I'll let you look into each individual spell. I'm not going to go every single one of them, because then this video would just be hours and hours long. Their stats have really low endurance, because they are, in the end, a spellcaster. So in battle, they have low life, they have pretty low health, so they're really squishy. Average accuracy and very high chance to dodge. Now, so you probably want them in the back, maybe with a bow, something of that nature. You don't want them in melee combat. Next, guys, we have our fighters. Fighters constantly regenerate endurance, so in battle, you will see them regain their health constantly. So if at any point you see one of your fighters getting really low on health and you have no way of healing them, you might want to have them run away and try to lose aggro and regenerate their endurance a little bit. They have high endurance, high health, not as high as the Barbarian, but they do have very high accuracy and very high deflection, which is really nice. It makes them really great tanks. The regeneration combined with just high defense is really, really nice. Fighters start out with one of 2 abilities, either Knockdown, which is just a knockdown you can use twice per encounter, or Discipline Barrage, which increases your accuracy by 10 for 15 seconds. Really nice as well. Personally, I would probably use Knockdown if you're going to go with a tank, just because a little more CC is going to cause him to not take damage, and less aggro on your other guys potentially. The next one we have is Paladin. Paladins have Faith and Conviction. Paladins have an inherent bonus to all of their defenses, which is really nice. Over the course of the game, the value of this bonus may shift based on the reputations the Paladin gains relative to the behaviors that are preferred by his or her order. Now that is something that is very different than the other ones I just covered. You have to choose an order that we'll get to in just a moment, but they have high endurance, high health, average accuracy, and very high deflection. So their chance to dodge is pretty nice. Usually you're going to have a shield, so their armor is going to be pretty nice. But let's go on to their order. So Paladins have an order that has different favored dispositions and disfavored dispositions. Now, I believe I have it turned off, and I can't go into the options menu to show you right now. You can turn on chat dispositions when you speak to someone. So, for example, it'll say, this is a cruel remark, this is a nice remark, and the such. And the more you use your preferred disposition, the more of a bonus you get to their abilities. And the more you use the disfavored dispositions, the lower it is. So something to keep in mind. The different orders have different favored dispositions and disfavored dispositions. And I believe these stats stay the same, it's just a matter of the dispositions changing. Yep. So like this one, benevolent and passionate, and he hates being deceptive and cruel. This one is honest, diplomatic, hates being cruel and aggressive. Of course, I believe there are 8 of them overall. They all have an opposite that they like and don't like, and I think the ones that aren't listed here, you can choose at any point, but they will not have a positive or negative effect on them. Next we have the Rangers, which start out with an awesome animal companion. All Rangers share a strong bond with an animal companion. The companion fights at the Ranger's command and is extremely valuable for its ability to run interference. Animal companions don't do much damage, but they have high damage reduction, so they make great tanks. The link between the Ranger and companion is powerful. If one goes down in battle, the other suffers as well. And that is really important to know. You must not have the pet die in battle, or it's going to cause your Ranger to suffer as well. So things will go badly. They have low endurance, high health, very high accuracy, and high deflection, making them terrific archers, which is, of course, you can see with the bow here. Now, when I go click next, we have ability to choose which ability, with the option to choose which ability they start with. The first one's Wounding Shot, 2 per encounter. We have a little bit of an interrupt, which just does damage, and we have Marked Prey, marked for 30 seconds. That is a bonus to your animal companion's damage. And if I hit next again, we'll have the option to choose the companion. Now, different companions have different bonuses. For example, the Boar companion inflicts more damage when they're below 50% endurance. Stag can activate a melee attack that does damage to all enemies in a small area around the main target. So they all have different bonuses and negatives in a way. So really look through them, figure out which one you like the most, and go with that one. The next we have is the Wizard. Now the Wizard is a complicated class, in my opinion. Their starting ability is Arcane Assault. It's a mid-range attack that hits a small area for raw damage and can leave targets dazed. Now dazed victim has reduced accuracy, perception, and intellect are all reduced by 2, attack speed reduced by 15, so it's just a lot of negatives on the opponent, which is really nice. And I believe raw damage is not of any kind of element, and I don't think it counts as physical either, so it's its own thing. Now, they cast spells from the grimoires, which they can carry around, which is that book right there. And you can carry around multiple, so for example, you can have different grimoires in your first slot and your second slot. Not in each hand, I'm sorry, it's in the different weapon sets. So you can have different weapon sets with different grimoires. And of course, being a wizard, they are very, very squishy. Very low endurance, very low health, very low accuracy, and very low deflection. They are extremely squishy. Of course, you don't need accuracy for spells, so that is why that is very low. So, wizards. Look at all these spells. Of course, I'm not going to go through them all, but you start with 4 of them. You can choose any 4 you want. So for example, I can go with these 4. And these are level 1 spells. At any point in time, you can have 4 different spells in your grimoire at a time, per level. So you have 4 level 1 spells, 4 level 2, 3, 4 as you level, etc., etc. Of course, you can unlock more and more of them, and so you can swap out during out of combat. You want to say, I don't want Jolting Touch, I want Slicken. Out of combat, you go ahead and switch that around. In combat, you can switch grimoires that have different specializations. For example, you can have one grimoire that focuses on fire damage, another one on chill, fog, however you want to do it. But keep in mind, you start with 4. And your grimoire is basically your spellbook. So if you want to have a lot of different ones, you want to carry around a lot of different grimoires. Now we have the Chanter. The Chanter is basically the bard. They are actually pretty cool. They have phrases and chants. All chanters can continuously speak chants made up of magical phrases. Phrases produce passive effects and help build a chanter's power until they can use an invocation. Now, invocations are powerful magical effects that chanters can create after they have spoken a required number of phrases through their chant. They have low endurance, low health, accuracy is average, and very high deflection. So you do not want them in melee range. So to start with, you can choose 2 different phrases. So for example, calm comes soft, winds of death, and dull the edge, blunt the point. They have different durations, they have a little bit of a linger, and they do different things. For example, this one, only enemies get affected, which is full aura. It does a little bit of slash damage, not splash, a little bit of pierce damage for 6 seconds. So if you want to, you can cast one and then the other. Let's see, select it. Yeah, so you gotta select one, then the other, so you have a little bit of overlap. And then, once you have cast, I don't recall how many, I think it might be three phrases, you go ahead and use an invocation. Here you can only choose one, so keep that in mind. Go through them all. This one's really cool. Summons 3 skeletons to fight for the party. Yeah, 3 phrases chanted. So I guess some of them might have higher and lower once you get into the higher magical levels. But yeah, summoning like 3 human skeletons, range 10 meters, speed average. I am not sure how long they last. They might only last for the encounter, which will be my guess. So figure out which one is most beneficial for you, and then go with that. The next class we have are Druids. Druids start with Spirit Shift. All Druids have mastered one animalistic form. These forms give a Druid strong melee abilities and grant an additional power while the Druid is shifted. Now, this is Spirit Shift. It does not mean you become the animal. It's like a wear version of the animal. And they have spells. Druid have access to a variety of offensive and some support-oriented spells. Every 2 levels, Druid automatically gain access to an additional set of spells. Initially, their spells can be cast a limited number of times per rest. As Druids gain power, their weaker spells eventually shift to per encounter use, which is really nice. And they have access to all the spells. So you can choose any one of them, and they just can be used a certain amount of times. They have low endurance, low health, very low accuracy, and high deflection, but this is not in their animal form. The different animals' forms have different effects. So for example, Spirit Shift Bear have high damage. They also have 10 damage reduction. All the other classes have 8, if I recall correctly. And basically they have all different bonuses and negatives. So go through those, figure out which one is best for you, and go with that one. Yeah, so they have no other options. So you have option, you basically get all the spells, and these do not tell you how often you can cast them. I'm sure once you're in the game, it will tell you. The next class we have is a monk. Oh, one other thing actually about the Druids. When they shapeshift, they gain different weapons, so you don't necessarily keep your weapons, of course. Like if you switch into a bear, you start with dual-wielding claws that do a considerable amount of damage, and the damage reduction actually makes your guy tankier. So don't worry about the low endurance, health. That is going to be modified by the slightly more tankiness of the form that you take. Okay. So next we have monks. They are, of course, the classic fisticuffs character. They don't use weapons. They have transcended suffering. When monks have no weapons equipped, their unarmed attacks are exceptionally powerful, and they continue to increase in damage as they gain levels. So you never have to worry about giving them more and better weapons. And they also get something called wounds. As monks are damaged, their pain generates wounds. wounds can be used to power many of the monks' special abilities. So their whole thing is that when they get hit, they're able to dish out more damage and use more abilities. So you want monks to be hit, but you want them, of course, to be able to survive, which is why they have high endurance and very high health. Their accuracy and deflection are also all very high. This is to compensate for the fact that they don't use weapons. And so we have the ability to choose, we have the option to choose between two abilities. We have Swift Strikes, plus times 1.25 attack speed for 10 seconds. Really nice, requires 1 wound. And Torment's Reach requires 1 wound as well, which has an area effect attack. I believe that's all the options they have. Yep. The next one we have is Priest. This is the typical healing class. Their starting abilities is Holy Radiance. Generates a modest amount of endurance for allies around the priest. Any enemy vessels, which is a type of enemy, caught in the area take burn damage and may be frightened. Again, frightened is just a debuff to resolve dexterity and accuracy. It is not a fear. Over the course of the game, the power of this ability may shift based on the reputations of the priest gains relative to the behaviors that are preferred by his or her deity. Now, same out like the Paladin, the priest has preferred cruel and all those things. And of course, they get spells. They have they're able to be used a certain amount of times per rest, and eventually per encounter as they gain more levels. They're of course very squishy, but being a priest, presuming you don't get one shot, you should be able to heal yourself back up. Low endurance, very low health, very low accuracy, and low deflection. And here are the deities you can choose from. All have favored dispositions and disfavored dispositions, so depending on your playstyle, you might want to choose different ones. Skane. Yeah, there it is. Yep. Deceptive, cruel, benevolent, aggressive. Go with whichever kind of playstyle you think you prefer. It'll be easier to play that way. And last one we have is Rogue. Rogues start with a sneak attack, applies bonus damage to the rogue's ranged and melee weapon attacks when the target has any of the following afflictions, which is basically any affliction. I'm not sure that it actually has any that are missing here. If there are, I'm sure you'll find out really quickly, but I think that's pretty much most, if not all, the afflictions you can have. It also applies to any target the rogue strikes with a weapon within the first 2 seconds of combat, which is really key. They have low endurance, low health, very high accuracy, being a rogue, and low deflection. So they're great at just attacking very quickly and being just, well, rogues. They start with one of two abilities, Crippling Strike or Blinding Strike. Both of them, I believe, have, a debuff that can then be affected by their sneak attack bonus. So moving on, we have our attributes, now that we're done with the classes. We'll just go ahead and continue with the rogue. So I went over all the different attributes, so their basic stuff. Another thing to mention is each point you put into a attribute is a linear increase. So for example, plus 9% damage and healing. As I put another point in, it's another plus 3%, another plus 3%. It doesn't matter if it's like 10 to 11, 11 to 12, 12 to 13. It doesn't matter. It's all linear for all the stats. This will matter a little more to people who play Dungeons and Dragons that are used to having things cost more points as the numbers increase. Now, you of course can push things below 10, but as you see, once it is below 10, it starts being negative. You could, in theory, go for Rogue, really low might, and just a ton of dexterity, a ton of perception, and just really just be able to, maybe intellect. I'm not sure, but if the rogue has a lot of AoE abilities, but you can use them as basically a interrupter or debuffer, and they don't need to do a lot of damage for that. The AoE and the high interrupt chance will be good enough, especially if they're dual wielding. So that is pretty much the attributes. Then we have, for every single class and race, you have cultures. Now, I believe these are the same cultures you get for any of the races and classes. All of them have just a different kind of little bonus. So this one, Resolve +1, Intellect +1, Constitution. But one thing also to keep in mind, as I'm switching these, you'll see the weapons and armor change. So if I wanted to go with a two-handed weapon, for example, I would go with the Rao Tai for the +1 Constitution. If I wanted to go with daggers, I might want to go with this. This is, of course, only starting. In the end, your weapons can be swapped out really quickly and bought new ones, but your little bonus will stay. So depending on your playstyle, you'll choose which culture to go with. Then we have the background. So once you choose the culture, you have the background. And again, this also has the different bonuses. Now, when we were choosing the the classes, it had different backgrounds, like stealth mechanics. So that's what we're going to cover right now, which is with the background as well. So you have, I don't remember how many you have, but there's like 5 to 10 of them. So lore is basically a person's knowledge. It can have different effects on being able to choose different options for speech, and allow you to choose options that wouldn't be available to you otherwise. Dissidence has stealth and lore. Stealth is, of course, the ability to sneak past enemies and be undetected. Survival increases the food, regeneration, and I guess quality of it. So, for example, with higher survival, if you have a beer, which I believe increases your damage resistance or damage reduction, one of them. Basically, the effect will last for longer, so you don't need to drink as much or use as much food. Regeneration over time will be much more effective, and people have higher survival. Then we have athletics, which is the amount of time a character can go without getting fatigued. It says athletics is used for physical feats like climbing, swimming, and jumping, and also just pretty much anything that's like fighting, walking a long periods of time without resting, and things of that nature. As time goes by and you do not rest in a campfire or an inn, you will become fatigued, or through different like cutscenes or just different events in the game, you might become fatigued. And athletics reduces the quickness that happens. You have lore, survival, mechanics. Mechanics is basically lockpicking in this game. The chance to deactivate traps, pick locks, and things of that nature. Really good to give your rogues a lot of mechanics. Personally, I love to start with mechanics or just the ability to lockpick early on, just so you don't need to have a rogue in the party necessarily. So I like to use, for example, Laborer that has athletics so you don't get a little tired really quickly if you battle a lot, and mechanics for the extra lockpicking. Now, you can open locks with actual lockpicks. You don't need to have mechanics and that. It gives you an option. So basically, if you have high mechanics, you can open a chest without using lockpicks, which is really nice. And I believe that is all of them. And then we have the appearance. So you can choose different colors for your clothes. Your primary colors, your secondary, which are basically your shirt and your pants. And then depending on your class, you can choose your skin and your hair color. And then we have no facial hair option because this is a female. And actually, let's go ahead and just choose male so we can really go into it. So we have, for this one, 13 different facial hair options, 5 different heads, 19 different hairstyles, Oh yeah, that looks pretty nice. And once you're happy, just go ahead and click Next. And you're able to select a portrait. There are 67 of them available. I believe if I choose Godlike... yeah, it's fine. Go to Appearance. Okay. I believe there were 66 originally. Maybe they added one in a patch. I did see it, the game update just recently. But basically you have 33 male and 33 female, and you can add your own images to the directory where this is located, and the number should increase, and you'll be able to choose your own custom pictures. So you have lots of options to choose from, and this is just the image that will appear in the bottom left and the I believe it's top left as well when you're using your characters. It doesn't, of course, have to look like your character. This is purely for you. And then we have the options for the voice. You, of course, have an option for none if you want your guy to just be mute. I see no point in that. I like to be able to hear my guy talk.
Now I am the leader of the group.
But I know some people really don't like to constantly hear your guys repeating the same words, same lines over and over as you do different abilities. So it's nice they have that option.
Kill them all! Keeping quiet.
Yes?
I've got this.
Let us end this!
Mystic, of course, really great for spellcasters.
Silence surrounds me.
Yes.
Follow me.
Attack!
My eyes are peeled. Yes.
That's pretty much the character creation. The only thing I think left would be to name it. But one thing to keep in mind when you are creating the characters is that you can have a party of 6, and this is really important. So you can create any character you want for your main. Personally, I wouldn't choose something like a priest, because you have to think that at some point, since it is an RPG, you'll probably be solo. Can you survive as a priest? Yes. Can you kill anything as a priest easily? Probably not. So your first or main class should be, in my opinion, something that you feel comfortable with going solo with for any point in the game. Personally, I find it really hard to start with a priest. They are great in the end. But since you, in the end, have a party of 6, and you can create every single character like this through the character creation, give them their own custom names and the such, you can go ahead and later on get a priest, paladin. You can have 6 barbarians, one of every different type, up to 6. It's just a lot of customizations in the character creation screen for your party. So it's something to, it's nice to really get into and understand pretty well. It'll help you out a lot. So I hope you guys enjoyed that and found it informative. Let me know if I missed anything, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye. Shop, you don't have a way to move forward. I don't. I'll just put you there for Grapeshot. And so if I select him, I can go here, and with him selected, I can swap to my bow. Which is pretty awesome. So at any point, if I feel like